who you are is who you are. That doesn't change. And we like to have these discussions about being a Ugandan and what our roles are, or what our role is as citizens, to make sure that we have the sort of country that I will be more than glad to live for my children who are growing up in this country. So together, we've been having these Twitter chats using the hashtag I'm Ugandan and hashtag my role. Do join us. Of course, if you have any questions on Twitter, do make sure you ask us. Tag the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. Tag me, my handle at Ben Mwine. And of course, if you're joining us live on UBC TV as well, welcome and thanks for joining us. Today, we talk about our city. We now have many cities, but really, when you think about it, Kampala still remains our biggest city. It's our capital city, and it's been going through quite a number of changes over the years. And we take a quick look at where we are as a city, where we want to be, and what's happening, and what we can do about it. We are supposed to be joined by the ED at Kcca, Madam Dorothy Kcca, but she had an emergency at the very last minute, and will be joining us in a few minutes. But we will start because we know how Twitterati can be brutal, and we don't want you accusing us of being incompetent, so we have to start on time. So she'll join us in a bit. Joining me for now, I've got someone who is synonymous with Kampala. Mr. Issa Sechito, a good friend who is in many ways known as Mr. Kcca. He's been spokesperson for Kcca for a very, very long time, but has now since grown to take on some other responsibilities, including sitting at PSFU as a Director of Trade and Commerce, but also gone regional now, representing Uganda at Kcca. So big things happening for you, Mr. Sechito. Good morning. It's good to see you.
Good morning, viewers. I'm very happy to interact with my bosses at the Kampala Capital City Authority. I am only going to miss one or two people from the political division because the equation must balance, and you know it has not balanced for many years just because of that. When you sit the technical people on one chair, then the other day you'll sit the political on the other chair. And at the end of the day, other than a constructive build-up, at times it goes into disarray. But I am
We
happy.
need to be speaking the same language. That's what you're saying.
We need to be speaking the same language. Now the third arm, the PPP approach, the private partnership. Right. Then the Kcittas and group now come in.
And then us around Bawansi, yes, of course, become a part of that.
My name is Issa Sechita, as you said, commonly known as Kcca. I'm the Director for Trade and Commerce at the Private Sector Foundation Uganda, the apex of business operators. And I'm currently, for the next 3 years, the Director for Kcca Business Council, Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. And that's where I have been. Right. So when you see things happening, like I saw in Nairobi recently, from the bypasses, which are like 4, when you go to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and the developments you see, you feel envious.
And that's why we're having these discussions, Mr. Sechita, because yes, we need to sort of figure out how do we not get left behind. Let me bring in our other guest for now.
Thank you.
Dr. Dan Okello, who is Director of Public Health at Kcca. But that's really a title because his portfolio stretches way beyond that. He in every sense of the word, is a bit more embedded than just public health. Dr. Okello, good morning. It's good to see you today.
Good morning, Ben. And I'm happy to be here. As you said, that public health is about life. Issa can only be productive when he's healthy.
Yeah.
So we kind of tend to touch all the facets of people here.
And again, public health in Kampala being a big deal because of, where we are as a population. I was trying to find some stats online here about where Kampala has come from as a population. And it's a bit shocking when you look at where we were just going back maybe 40 years ago. I'm 42 years old now. I came to Kampala for the first time in 1990. I was just about 10, I think, at the time. And it's been interesting to see how the city has grown in some ways and not grown in others. I was asking just before we started, Mr. Sechito, when he first came to Kampala, you came to Kampala almost about the same time as me, actually?
I was older than you.
Yeah.
Because I came to join my high school certificate at Kcca Academy.
I went to Kcca Academy.
So, and incidentally, the city has grown in some aspects, but not in the others.
Yeah.
For example, we are so tight that any form of development that we propose encroaches on some people's rights. And therefore, you must be very balanced and determined to take any step forward, or else you could leave the city under the mess that it were, and yet we can't accept it to stay behind.
And that's the discussion that I wanted to have. Dr. Okello, are you a villager like Issa and I, or are you a city born? You're the guys who grew up here in the city. We are encroaching on your territory.
I grew up in Naguru, and again, when you look at the history of Kampala, the Naguru area used to be the place for the civil servants who are working either in Kcca. You'd call it more or less African quarters. Then you had the Kololos and Nakasero for the higher end people. Then old Kampala was for the people of the Asian descent. But looking at the growth of Kampala, you know where the city abattoir is?
Yes.
It was put up in 1935. By that time, it was outside the precincts of Kampala.
It was in the village.
It was actually outside Kampala.
On the suburbs.
Yes.
Just for the benefit of anyone who might not know where the abattoir is. Abattoir is the place where they cut meat, of course. Lufura, I think, is the local word. And if you know Kampala well, it's just after the Airtel roundabout as you head towards Bugolobi, less than maybe about 400 meters away from there. And so you're saying that essentially when that was built, it was in the village?
In 1935, it was actually in the outsides. And when you look at the industrial area, the way the planning of Kampala was, industrial areas tend to be towards the outskirts of the city.
Right.
So you can see from the growth of that side. When you were there in 1990, you'd probably a place like Chiwatule was farmland. And that's where people would actually have their...
Bokoto,
yes,
I think at some point was...
The tarmac used to stop, if I remember right, where the traffic lights are in Bokoto. Then from there to the next lights in Ntinda was Maram. So that's how much Kampala has grown when you look at the changes.
I currently live in Chiwatule, and I've got some neighbors who stay in their village. So Chiwatule is the way I would normally go to Kashari to check on my mother. Them, when they're going to the village, they go to Chiwatule. The population of Kampala was about 700,000 people in 1989 when Issa and I came over. It's now grown to almost more than 3.5 million current figures, if I'm not mistaken.
When you look at the resident figures, when they count and so many people are staying, it's about 1.8. But for planning purposes, you look at the transient or the day population,
the daytime,
which goes anywhere to about 4 million, 4.5. So you can say during the day, 10% of the country's population is in one area.
That's actually a very good perspective.
Which is Kampala.
10% of all of Uganda on any given day will be in
Kampala,
in this city.
Yes.
You can't understate the amount of strain that puts on this city. So it sort of gives you context into all the challenges that we're dealing with have to be looked at from that perspective. And what I'm hoping that the two of you can give us some insight into is how do we balance that, but also how sustainable is that going forward? Because
I think it is a big challenge, but we must concert efforts because it is not a position in isolation. What we are crying of is what Nairobi was suffering from. Talk about all African cities. Our meetings for COMESA sit in Lusaka, Zambia, no different. But the steps taken by governments on adjusting and also coping with the human rights demands is very important. the region, especially into the East African customs jurisdiction. There are both arrangements, the technical existence as well as the political. Mayors in there are elective, but what is very important when it comes to a decision to develop a place in the city, because you know it's very important when you talk about Kampala, the capital city, amongst other cities, because 70% of the tax contribution from the private to the GDP, 70 comes from Kampala. And therefore,
if you have 10% of the entire country sitting here every day, that's bound to be
so
expected,
when Kampala is coughing, the rest, or when he's sneezing, the rest, you know what happens. So we need to be very careful on how we handle this. If the political division of Kampala, the Lord Mayor and the Kcca Council, the technical staff as led by the Executive Director and other directors, then the ministers for Kampala, and with the practitioners, the traders in the markets, the traders on the streets, the traders in the kiosks. If we are to agree, Kampala can grow. It is very difficult to take a decision because of that lack of cohesion between the stakeholders. You take a decision at council that would be very welcome, and for political interests, it is sidelined. Right. You take a technical decision. For example, when we said this is an NMT, non-motorized road, from up to Table Road.
Yeah.
When you hear any councillor talk about that, you can shed tears. We all participated, workshops were held, very big decisions were done to the expense, at the expense of some of us, because there are hotels like a JBK, like a Holiday Express, whose business has been so much cut by, they said, okay, in the name of development, let's move. But when you talk to one of the people that is in the studio, talk about the Lord Mayor or anybody you pick at random from the council, the nature of explanations they will give on that will be political and only agitating towards winning the hearts of the people. So we need to take some decisions, although they are pressing a section of society. For health, you can imagine about the public health. Once upon a time, before you would be given a trading license, his team would pass around to inspect and see the ventilation, the exit roads, the garbage, the control of the street vending and every kind of nuisance, so that a license is regulatory, other than now, where it is almost a revenue generating project. Right. So when you are going to do this, it is very important that you come out and explain, so that if the public is blaming Kcca, is blaming Kcca, is blaming so and so, the public, the other people who are not part of it, have decided to fall.
So here's the thing.
Yes.
We have too much blame games going around, and in a big way they contribute to some of the problems we have as a country. I think the reason we are having these discussions and trying to expand them across all sorts of platforms is we've got to get to the point where we go beyond pointing fingers and having real discussions about where are we, what do we need to do to go to where we need to be. And so if I come to you, Dr. Okello, for a moment, and again, we try and stay away from politics, because politics is politics. We want to think about what we do as citizens together, regardless of whether you're a politician or not. In terms of the context that we started with when we began our chat, the amount of strain that we end up putting on this city and how much it has grown to the point now that Sunday is almost pretty much part of Kampala now. For those who don't know, Sonde is somewhere between, I think, Namugongo and Kcca, right? We seem to be going to a place where very soon Mukono is part of Kampala in any way you think about it. If you're looking at the metropolis, right? The amount of strain that puts on the city, and let's first look at it from your perspective, which you're very familiar with, the issue of public health. How much of a strain is that for you, being able to manage this monstrosity with so many more people than should be living on this small patch?
Yeah, it comes right from, as you say, where we need to see how we can be able to look at things different from the urban environment. When you look at the world over, 90% of urbanization is going to occur in Africa in the next 50 years. Africa is going to become the most urbanized area. Now, what does that mean is that people are going to move from rural areas and concentrate in what we call, for another term, trading centers. Now, if you want to see how we are rapidly urbanizing, between 1989 and now, how many trading centers did you know? Because each time you have a trading center, that's where you're having that. Now, when you bring it to Kampala, and if I stationed you at Najana Nkumbi, I stationed you in Chireka, I stationed you in Busega, and you saw between 7 to probably 9 the traffic or the people that are actually moving in. One is that you're having strain on the roads that are actually coming in, because it's either the trucks, it's either the vehicles. Now it is, how do you look at it? Is this an opportunity that you can be able to exploit and make it better? For Issa, I would actually look at it as an opportunity, because you're having all of a sudden this number of people coming into the city.
To buy.
I don't think they are coming to come and sit somewhere. They are coming to transact.
Oh, yes.
So how do we make it easier for them to transact? This can be through mobility. You want someone to go, do his business, and move away. The other thing with the city is it's supposed to create a better quality of life. That's why you see people will do whatever they can to be able to come to the city. When we were in secondary school, we used to have a term for fried and boiled cassava. So the boiled cassava was called charo, and the fried cassava was called chibuga, because they believe the chibuga tended to have a better,
a bit more fancy.
A bit more fancy.
Yeah.
So cities are supposed to have that fancy nature in it. But again, the question then comes: do you retrofit? Do you retrofit, or do you move forward with what is there? And that is where we are caught up as the city, and where the decisions have to be made. Way back, not even way, in the 80s, people used to stay on the Winton Road, not so?
Correct.
People used to stay on Parliamentary Avenue. And that was deliberate planning, because what happens is, as the city is shutting down at 5, the people who are staying on the Winton are coming back from work. And once you come back from work, you notice you'd want to buy something. Now, if the shops are below you, the business hours tend to extend.
Right.
So what we did, we moved to a suburban level, whereby let's work in one place and stay in another place. Now, people come and work in the city, and at 5, everybody is rushing out.
Yeah.
And yet it is possible in the Chikubo areas to actually have apartments on the upper floors, such that in the evening, the shops can then be able to open longer. Now, those are opportunities I'm looking at for business, but opportunities to also be able to let people have a better quality of life. But again, the social services have to be able to come in tandem. The sewerage, there was a time they were laying pipes, and people downtown were very bitter that they are making the roads, there's no business happening. So National Water has laid a number of pipes. And the other day they came to me and said, now, doctor, can you help us such that people can connect? But because they laid later, after people had put septic tanks, now telling somebody to move from a septic tank and to connect, and his water bill is going to double. Yet it is better for him, because some of those kids actually, the septic tanks what they put are not able to maintain this. Yeah. What is actually there.
Let's just talk about that for a moment. In terms of when we talk about sewage, you've traveled, both of you have traveled quite a lot. You've seen some of the more advanced cities and how technically advanced their systems are, because they've been planned like that from the beginning. As are we even capable of being able to go anywhere in that direction in terms of our planning for things like sewage? Because, again, do we have enough space to be able to do that? Do we need to start having discussions about the fact that, look, there are things that we will never be able to do in Kampala because of the nature of how our city is compared to places like Cape Town or, or Cairo?
It all depends on the bigger master plan. We now talk about the greater Kampala metropolitan city. Time is gone when you're going to come and cut my veranda that you are installing pipes or wires for any reason. You need to do it once. Right. What is done in other cities, because we did it as a case study sometime, very huge provisions are done underground. National Water, Umeme, talk about any telecommunications companies, they concert efforts so that they are prepared today and 10 years to come, that if there is an installation that is to be done, you will just open the manholes and then insert the cables.
Because you have tunnels running underground.
Yes, because you already have tunnels running around. Yeah. But here somebody completes a house, puts the pavers, and National Water or any other facility for the telecommunications comes, and they cut away everything. And when they are instating it, it does not go to the original. That is one. Two, we also need to be very mindful about the engineering section of Kcca. Please, can we stand our ground? Let us forget about the facilities that are existing, but the emerging ones. Give proper instructions to the developers. If parking space is mandatory, please let it be. If you must provide for anything underground in form of passages, let it be. Right. But here, the plan is as approved, the construction is contrary. A space that was meant for a parking space or any other reserve is used as a store and is used as a shop or lockups. Under the same regime of the manager or the engineer that permitted this plan and approved it through protocol, it is the same regime that allows somebody to construct a building, it is finished, and we hear that everything that is being developed, you need to be inspecting it so that you can know the progress. So we at times there are some lapses where one must have a facility, for example, parking or at third or whichever floor, right. And then the neighbor is completely having nothing. And there is a harmonization. They say on such and such a street we don't allow such a facility. Yeah. Unfortunately, one has one that is contradicting depending on what the neighbor has done. So this takes us back.
Is it possible to actually be able to do the things you're talking about, again, based on what we've said, how small and congested Kampala is, yes. The amount of strain there is on all the resources that we have, it seems to me like it's going to be impossible to be able to achieve all of these things.
Fine, let us do it two-way. If it cannot, then let us forget about this and then we widen the city, right? We legally and otherwise. Or else, I told you that what is happening here also happens in other cities. Right. People, the populations are growing, but what weakens Uganda, Kampala being part of it, is when you take a decision, you backtrack. If you say we are going to have evening markets, right? I give you an example. On such and such a street, whether in Nasa Road or otherwise, you locate it, and just mere bickering or a section of society protesting is enough to drop the idea. Right. At the end of the day, nothing is implemented as to the letter. If that were done, even the manholes, even all the facilities that we would wish to put would be possible. Do it once, it is costly, it is painful, but it cannot reoccur within the same period.
But, and therein lies the challenge that comes to Dr. Okello on this, because I think, like we said, you've got that delicate balance of where you know what a city should look like. But then you also have the reality of where you are right now as a city. Kampala is not a normal city. It's a very interesting city that has its own unique challenges that have to be dealt with. So the issue of the traders, for example, because 10% of Uganda comes here during the day, some of them will usually end up spending the night in one form or another, which leads to people speeding over in the street sometimes to sell their things and all of that. I've noticed one of the ones that bothers me, especially with the roadside markets, is the challenge it creates health-wise in terms of sanitation. If you can just give us some insight into that from your perspective, the challenges that have emanated for you to be able to do your work because of that situation, and in an ideal situation, what would you want to see? What is getting in the way of doing that? What would you suggest we do to make sure it happens for an improved city, if you want to call it that?
Okay, Ben, you cannot police people to the end of having an end result that's expected. You need people to be able to be part of your process that you're moving with. And I'll give you an example. Ben, try to light a cigarette in a bus or light a cigarette in a taxi. The passengers will throw you out. Yeah?
Yes, they will.
They'll even tell you, I'm not going to enter that taxi until that person stops smoking. So it's the same way as that if I'm coming to rent a building and you actually do not have parking, why should I then go into that building and say, you know what, you do not have that parking, so why should I be able? So the first is that citizenship policing, that is critical anywhere. And that is usually in all marks of cities that move. There is that kind of, either it may be citizen, either it may be an association, either it may be somebody who is pushing you to get better. The next, I'll bring it from my background. Way when I used to work in hospital, there's a patient who came. And he had to undergo an operation, but he told me, doctor, I don't want a scar.
Okay.
So there are certain things where you have to do to get better, but the scar is not going to make you any worse.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you have to get that scar in order to get some things better. Now the question is, how big a scar do we want to actually have, but when you know you can be able to move better? Mm-hmm. The same way as you're saying, you need to make an omelette to make an egg. So there are certain decisions that we'll have to make that are already being made. And one of them is the decongestion program that is going on. If you want to have your cities clear and you want to have mobility on the streets, we need to get those kiosks out. Otherwise, we are never going to say, I want to have a walk downtown, I want to do window shopping, because someone is in the walkway and things like that. If lorries are parked on the streets because they want to offload for 5 days.
And they are.
And they are actually there.
Medium.
Then how is somebody going to have access to the shop to see what this person is selling if the lorry is blocking all that? So when we are going ahead and doing this decongestion, it is to make the city a better place for people to be able to make more money, but also have a better quality of life. So again, back to your question it is as us. Then if you have your piece of land and I probably put my marks on a few centimeters, you're going to make a lot of noise. Can we have that kind of spirit in our city that if somebody is dropping garbage on the streets, stop him and say, Genda nekasasiro. If there are things we find we are doing wrong, let's be the first level of citizenship. And that is how we're actually going to move.
It's very difficult to do that when you are grossly outnumbered. As telling one of the Kcca story earlier on before we started about an experience I had when I traveled to South Korea with a friend of mine, and we got some snacks from the hotel as we were moving around as tourists eating, and when we were done we looked for a place to dispose of our garbage and we couldn't find any. There were no garbage bins anywhere on the streets, but there was also no garbage anywhere on the streets, and we were just absolutely shocked at how a city can be that clean with no garbage bins anywhere. And in Kampala, where Kcca has put garbage bins every 200 meters. People will still throw wrappers out of the taxi and Range Rovers, and that sort of attitude, it doesn't help us, does it?
Yeah, it takes time.
It takes time, and we can't tire.
Yeah.
To attain it. But I was once in Vietnam as a football promoter, taking players there. Just bought a piece of Orbit, opened it and started queuing as I was traveling with Mr. Ibrahim Buembo, former international player.
Right.
I dropped because of the indiscipline.
You were a typical Ugandan.
Yeah, I was a typical Ugandan. A very young kid, like 5 years, came following me. We could not communicate in language. They don't know English, they don't know my... Yeah. But was said, pointing that I should remove and go with it. Yeah. And like the problem you had, I had nowhere to place it. So but he said you put it. He was challenging me to put it into my pocket.
Until you can find a place where you can dispose of it.
Yes, so I moved with it. I was so ashamed. Good enough, they didn't know me very well. We would not communicate. But the way I was challenged, I saw not to ever, even when I come back to Kampala, ever throw a bottle. Even when I opened this water, you saw me struggling to hand it to someone to take it away. Yeah. Because I was tortured and I learned. So that's the pain at times that it takes. But you also need to copy. Kampala people, especially our planners, must copy what we see in those cities. I bought some bed sheets in Ho Chi Minh City at 10 p.m. while I was on plane coming back to Kampala the following day. Right. When I went back to my room, Mr. Ibrahim Wembo bought them from me at a cost. As a trader, I moved with my trade.
You made money.
I made money. Thinking I would go back at the same morning to buy as we went to board. Right. For him, he knew I would not get it. A piece I bought for worth like 50,000, I would buy it 120 from the official shops. Oh, wow. Kumbe, these were rejects for the poor class. Well, like same cotton. So what happens? Very bright lights at night. When it comes to 7 p.m., some lorries come with the lights. They display stalls. Each one knows where to display and they sell. By 5 p.m., an alarm goes and they are all packing to go. The following morning, you meet very expensive and well-laid shops. I went back, I told him I must get back my bed sheets, this is your money. It was a learning experience for me. He told me those markets of night. I didn't just have time and I wanted the bed sheet. So what point I want to lay here is our people at the authority must be ready to copy and plan. I am asking whether the Lord Mayor, whether my sister, the ED, how about if in the evenings, for all the people that are disturbing her, to create for them space where to work from, by 7, areas like Nasa Road, Nkuruma, these people are in printing mainly. They become vacant. By 8 p.m., there are no people there selling items. Right. They are inside with their machines, and outside we can control anybody that wants to vend any items. What the hell prevents us from taking advantage of such a space and utilize it for the night people, other than allowing them to litter and go everywhere that they see a space? Right. This is something that we can do. If you don't want to go there, please forget about this. We shall harass you from the street through enforcement and another personnel, while they are comfortably protected where we have confined them.
And it becomes their space. And it
becomes their space. And they know the timelines. It takes public health, the toilets. We could provide for moving toilets. It takes very extreme lights for security. It takes the security, the enforcement that would chase them during the day are protecting them during that time when they are working. So these are some of the issues that are not put into practice because of lack of some cohesion between the stakeholders that are at play, the ministers, the technical department, and the politicians from the council.
And everyone needs to sort of be on the same page for us to be able to do this.
Definitely.
Ben, have you gone for the Sunday market? You know, we started. That's why we have started something.
Right.
Okay.
It's not like we have actually been seated.
Okay.
Every Sunday, right from is this Bloom Street?
That one is now suspended
Right
because
from
of the NMT.
Exactly.
Right.
But we started along that area. Remember the Sunday market?
And we welcomed it.
And the idea was to see, is this something that Ugandans can actually be able to adopt with the Sunday market? And we did feasibilities, Allen Road. We went down there to around the Wino area because we are looking at which streets are actually able to be able to handle this.
Yeah.
Of course, now the next discussion is between the owners of the arcades and the businesses, whether people in the arcades will then be the ones to move out for their business or will actually have new ones. But as you say, that's a discussion that has been there. And definitely, as you're saying, for cities, what opportunity can be done. And you described it very well. There are those who may, in terms of equity, those who may not be able to afford the rent in the shops. When do you bring them to have the opportunity?
Yeah.
The other option is to look at the, what's the name? The Buburo.
Yes, moving market.
Yes, Friday I know there is where Kamocha.
So it's where
Then
I should let you know it's where I buy all my jeans from.
So now the next thing would be, how do we modernize those markets as they are? Because they're already there traditionally, people are used to them. Now that could be the discussion of the fields where they act. How do we modernize them such that people can use them? I think that's a discussion that will be.
But as well,
Yeah.
the Kcca needs to engage because they have the muscle. The landlords, some of the Kampala landlords are so backward, I'm sorry to say this. 5, 2, 3, 4 floors are empty.
Aren't you one of the Kampala landlords?
No, I'm a landlord in Namasuba and other areas. I'm not let in the CBD, I'm a tenant. But you know, it is a very thin line between landlords and tenants. I could be a tenant in Kampala CBD while I'm a landlord somewhere else. But the point is, all these huge arcades that are vacant at the top, why isn't there an arrangement where, whether in the evening or at any one time, there is a worked out plan where there could be temporary markets and they are earning some money there other than closing the
Because they lock them off.
They lock them off and yet they are not occupied.
Yeah.
We could do a project trying like for 3-5 years. You make a deal with the landlords that are agreeable to it, so that all the vacant spaces are taken advantage of for the people to work there, even if it means taking off some time, not all time, all prime time.
Yeah.
I think this is something that needs to be explored.
Well,
when you lay on table, I don't know.
We'll probably no, because I think one of the things that would definitely love to hear, Dr. Okello, is in terms of some of the big plans that are being laid out for where we are going as a city. It would be good to hear from you on those a bit later on. But let's talk a little bit now about one of the sticky issues, and this is pollution in the city. I was in Bunyonyi last weekend for a work retreat, and the moment we got back into the city, we all fell sick instantly. And I'm kidding you not, it must have been about 32 of us. And just the quality of the air in just those 3 days had changed so much that it was obvious that there was something very, very different. When you look at what's happened to cities like New Delhi and Mumbai and Abuja, do you have any plans from a public health perspective to try and make sure we don't end up like those? Because we seem to be heading there. Every once in a while now you see the smog covering the whole of Kampala. It's something that never happened 20 years ago. It's now becoming commonplace.
Ben, you're already there. Not that you're already there. I think about 3 years ago, because the first thing is to quantify what pollution is. because you may not realize, you cannot tell that this air is polluted or not. So we purchased 25 air quality monitors in the city and we put them in strategic areas. With other partners, we now have close to 70 air quality monitors. We are buying another 25.
Okay.
What are we seeing? Early morning, air quality levels are really bad. They're about 5 times the recommended standard. They're actually above the recommended standard, up to 5 times above recommended standard.
Okay.
Late in the evening, towards the night, the air quality does get very bad. Why? Morning, vehicles, borders.
Old vehicles. Very old vehicles, because we
Yes.
drive old cars in this
Drive
country.
old cars, but also borders. Borders, what they call, is it a one-stroke engine? You put the oil and you put the what?
The petrol.
The petrol, so it mixes and there is no catalytic converter. So because of that, it's making air quality very bad. In the night, what is happening? People are burning rubbish. So when people burn Kcca, it makes air quality extremely bad. The other issue we are seeing in areas where there is bad air quality is, surprisingly, where you find a congregation of people roasting chicken and doing all sorts of that open roasting and business. It's also making air quality.
Which is every suburb, really.
Which is, so where they are
across.
concentrated, we are having a lot of that. So the air quality levels for the city, actually one of my lecturers in medical school, he left and went to Cape Town. He said the air quality here was that bad. So what does that mean is that it has an effect on business. If a tourist is making a decision to actually come here, one of the issues you look at, what is your air quality index? If it is bad, you say, you know what, let me go to another country where it's actually. But the beauty with it is that it can be reversed.
Right.
And one of the things that we had actually requested for it to be reversed is a law had been requested in Parliament, whereby cars, they had actually suggested 8 years. Cars that are older than 8 years are not allowed into the country.
Right.
Because through that vehicle emissions, you can be able to reduce the air quality. You don't need to burn your rubbish. Or the last one is, which is quite reversible, is dust.
And we have quite a bit of that.
Yes, so us having maram roads. So just one of the effects of tarmacking our roads will be able to improve our air quality.
There is also something that is very bad, and this is noise pollution, Doctor.
Yes.
I am telling you,
That's a big one.
the big companies
Sachito,
are doing it with impunity. You go, my neighbor.
Don't mention names. We might get sued. We don't want to get sued.
You go, okay. Go to any street.
Right.
These mobile
Bars and
companies.
yeah.
Now, everybody is competing for the loudest.
To attract
To
customers.
attract the customers. 10 shops have nothing, they are not, but the third or the fifth is at maximum. Very big loudspeakers.
Very
and
bad
this
loudspeakers.
is the generation of hoofers. A small one like this one will produce a sound as if it is the whole house with the speakers. So noise pollution. I don't want to mention companies.
Yeah.
But
we know them.
Doctor knows.
No, you'll tell me quietly.
My God.
So I need to ask about this because we might joke about it, but it's not funny.
That is not.
You're a doctor, so you're able to give us some very good insight on this. If you look at the effects of this pollution combined, how bad does it get in the long term? But also, you talked about cars, and again, this takes me back to where we started, that we've got to be able to have a balance between the reality of where we are and where we want to be. The average Ugandan is not going to be able to afford a car that's less than 8 years old. That's the truth. Chances are, if you look in this room, all of us probably drive cars that are more than 8 years old. That's still going to be a problem.
Yeah, and what is the end game? Okay, let me give you this. When we looked at the data, I think about 26,000 Ugandans died due to pollution-related, air pollution-related consequences, either due to heart disease, due to diabetes, anything.
26,000.
26,000 Ugandans per year. That is the estimate.
Right.
Now, 20,000 Ugandans died due to HIV.
So we are
So
losing.
you may actually say you're losing more Ugandans due to the effects of pollution than you are to HIV, if I can contrast it that way. Now that is how stuck it is. Now the challenge is because it is not visible.
And
they will say, oh no yafudo mutima,
right,
because now Issa came here in 89.
Yes.
He has been here from 89 and the air quality has been getting worse. The next time they will go and say, you know what, you're having respiratory disease. He won't actually connect it to that. Then he's getting hypertensive.
Yes.
He won't connect it to that. The children you're actually growing up in this city, their cognitive development is what?
Because
is actually affected. Then you'll say, where we got you, not knowing that actually the environment is actually bringing in is this. That's how the beauty is. It is actually in our what? In our control.
The good thing, we are trying to harmonize this. I was in Nairobi. I came back on Sunday. East African community and under Kcca. Right. We are trying to provide guidelines for the used vehicles, at least this law for the 8 years. You know, that's where the controversy is. I'm the speaker for the trading community. And I'm supporting the campaign to ban overused vehicles. So that's what you said, choosing
the balance. How do we
have agreed as a country, there are vehicles that we can no longer import. 2, we are trying to harmonize this because the ozone layer is one. The Lake Victoria is one.
Yes.
So if you do a controversial policy as Kenya and Uganda, yet you belong to the East African community legislature, then you are missing it. So we are becoming a bit hard on this. If we cannot contain it under the East African community dimension, definitely we shall go to the Kcca. And who knows, we're already studying how we go into the Africa free trade zone, so that we are all connected, so that the weak to take action like my country can combine with the ones to take a decision like Egypt. So under this, we can be able to treat such a sensitive agendas like noise and air pollution.
Actually, Ben, since on pollution, there is a habit that is going on, and I think this is a chance for me to speak about it. Garage owners are stealing catalytic converters, what they call it Kcca. Can we please stop that habit? Because that is what actually is supposed to
control excess,
to clean the exhausts and make it get into the air.
What are they doing with them? Are they putting them in other cars?
They actually, they actually sell them.
Right.
To who?
To who?
Now, when you look at the...
That's my question. Who are they selling them to?
How do I say it? When they are recycling a vehicle, the most expensive part is actually the catalytic converter.
It's about 4 million shillings for 2010 Corolla, for example.
What people do, you can actually export it and sell it outside the country because the metal that is used there is quite a precious what? Mineral. It's actually a precious mineral. So people have now realized.
So we're exporting
some
catalytic converters.
Some people are doing that because they know it can
most
actually
of us here are victims.
I think all of us are victims.
I am a bit into the transport industry, and I have cars for letting for self-drive.
Yes.
One day I had to use over 15 million to replace for 4 cars. One of the cars, the modern ones, cannot move
without that
cannot change gears.
Yes.
If it has been
removed. Right.
And therefore,
you have no choice but to replace it.
You must get it, and getting it is not less than 1 million, 2 million, 1.5, depending on which car. Any car is a difference.
I'm a bit of a car dealer, so I can tell you.
The Uganda police and other security personnel, please don't ignore this. At least if you can allow that, we lose the money. Let us lose the money and not lose the lives.
Because, and that's the thing, Dr. Okello, what do we do about this? Because when you talk about more Ugandans dying from effects of pollution than HIV, and because it's going to come into non-communicable diseases, so but we know what's happening. So how urgently do we deal with that, and how do we deal with it? What do we do?
You know,
who is responsible? How do we get them to start doing? We're talking about me being a Ugandan and my role and what I need to do. But you know how human beings are, we are fickle. Unless we get pushed, sometimes we don't get things done. So how do we get people to get pushed to pay attention to this?
One is that now we have started to actually let people realize that once you pollute your air, it comes back to you.
Right.
Because you're not going to move with your air in a box and say, this is mine.
No.
And you'll be breathing it in your box. You'll be breathing the same air everybody is breathing. But
even if you're wearing a mask.
Yes. So once you go to non-communicable disease, there is no government that can afford to treat its people once you have higher numbers of non-communicable disease. So the payment is going to come back in your what?
In your pocket.
In your pocket. You may think not now, but it's going to catch up with you. And they'll tell you that usually when you're getting older, you should start saving money for your treatment in hospital. And because non-communicable diseases are lifestyle diseases, if you can be able to change your lifestyle, then you won't have to pay that much. But as I said, it affects the children.
Yeah.
You will have prematurity in mothers. You want to get a baby because they are living in this kind of environment. You have a premature baby. You have to put the baby in ICU. You're paying a lot because of that, because what kind of environment have you been in?
Right.
So we should not tire to keep on telling people that what you think you're getting from your 1.2 million, getting that Chisani, you will actually go back home and find that your child is having a challenge, or your wife.
Eventually, it ends up coming back to haunt you. I'd like us to take some questions. So if you've got any questions for us on Twitter, please do ask anything, suggestions that you might have for how we can make Kampala a better city. Would be more than glad to deal with those. Do tag me at BenMwine, tag the ministry, tag Kcca, of course, as well. And we'll try and get some of those answered for you. Dr. Okello, one of the things you just talked about with pollution, we know it's coming from I think right now a big chunk of it will be coming from borders. Like you said, one-stroke engine, lots of smoke being spewed out all the time. And yet again, striking that balance, because I use borders quite a bit. The traffic jam that we have in the city at the moment is quite intense, so you find yourself having to actually take a border once in a while. What do we do to manage that particular situation where yes, there is a need for a border, but then we want to have a city that's organized in a particular way? How do we strike that balance?
Yeah, Issa said he was in Vietnam. I was also in Vietnam sometime. When you go to Hanoi,
yes,
and you stop at a traffic light, there are actually many more
borders than vehicles.
Than actually vehicles.
And they follow instructions.
And they follow instructions. But as you get pollution, there's a very enterprising gentleman somewhere in Ntinda there, who is actually doing electric what?
Yes, I saw one of those this week. I was shocked that the bike wasn't making noise until I realized that it was also accelerating too quickly. Then I looked and saw, oh, he's actually using a battery.
Yes,
I thought that was
electric border. Yes. And when you look at the variation in costs, they are not actually that much. So it's again now educating people to move to the electronic, and we can slowly by slowly replace them. China did it. You know, China before, they were either bicycles or borders before the explosion. So that could be one way to encourage people to move to that. Then we'll be able to create the market for even people to...
No, but that's assuming we can actually manage the batteries, because the disposal of that already, you have a challenge with waste disposal in this city, so you might go from one problem to a bigger one.
That's another revenue stream, whereby instead of being the entrepreneur, you can actually have battery recycling.
And they are recycling them already.
And they recycle them already.
Uganda battery buys them.
So that's already another revenue stream that you can be able to have from there.
Yeah.
So to me, the issue would be
but
to see
we also need, as business people, we are ready to lose part of the business by not importing cars that are 8 years and above, whichever year we shall agree. But we also needed to create a policy. If you want me to stop bringing 8 years aged cars, and then there is no recycling policy for the one of 20 years.
Right.
What is the rationale?
Yeah.
All the vehicles, the lorries, the Kamunyes, 25 years on the road. What is it that Parliament or the government is doing so that we also recycle what we already have?
Because it's not seen as a priority for us at the moment.
But it's dangerous.
Exactly, right?
Ugandans and everybody, ladies and gentlemen, you should know that we have one ozone layer. Whether you are in America or here,
Mr. Sechito, before you get to the ozone layer, Dr.
Yes.
Okela has told you we are dying already.
Oh.
We will die before the ozone layer dies because of the pollution that we have. Let's talk very briefly about public transportation, because that's another thing that we have as a challenge here in Kampala. How do we improve that? There's been all sorts of suggestions being made. Some attempts have been made. We don't seem to be making too much progress. Mr. Sechito, your friends,
the taxis.
yeah, we don't seem to be making much headway in terms of improving public transportation in Kampala.
It will be a very big hurdle if we are to decongest Kampala,
Which we must.
when we still
Right.
have the tax parks in the CBD. It is inevitable. It's a hard decision that at any one time we need to take.
Who
we-
takes that decision?
The Kcca and the entire government, because it is the mandate of the Kcca to plan for us and provide the enabling environment for us to work well. We needed to extend or to transfer some of these tax packs. If that cannot be, then we need to also copy a leaf from some of the developed countries, some bigger buses, because they take.
Do we have enough space for them?
Well, where shall we get the spaces? They could be running on the road.
Right.
By the time I was a kid, we used to have buses, Serwanga Luanga Bus Company, so on and so.
UTC.
They would come on hour. If it is leaving by 2 and you are 5 minutes past 2, you are left.
Which is how
Why
most
don't we make
smart
them?
cities.
Yes. Why don't we make them move around under guidance?
But-
So crying for space, you could be waiting from Mukono while one vehicle is filling the people, then you move and you come, you stay here for less pollution at the same time, all right?
Yeah.
Taking a number of people to avoid the congestion, and now you are creating about space. If we can't create the space, let us create the vehicles that are on the run. Other than
Okay.
being stationed there for the whole days, no pass. You go to Old Tax Park.
No, it gets.
It's already renovated, but
it's
now,
it's a mess.
even passing there as a human body
Yeah.
is a crisis. So,
Dr. Okela, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I said, usually space is not the main constraint. There are cities that are
Smaller and narrower
have narrow space. If you've been to Rome,
Yeah.
it's actually
Very narrow streets.
Even London, the streets are not that wide, but they have buses all.
Yeah.
So now the issue is, and I know we have government, and I think there is a private partner who has actually, and Kcca Motors, where they're supposed to be able to manufacture these buses. We have already identified the bus rapid transport corridors that are going to be within
I'm
the
sorry
city.
to interrupt you for a second, but I need to do that because I forget. I was one of the biggest critics of this Kcca Motors thing because I thought it was a big joke until last weekend. I just mentioned that I was away for a retreat in Bunyonyi, and we traveled on one of the Kcca buses, and I've got to issue a public apology to Kcca Motors because I found out that, one, this is not an assembled car. A lot of the construction is actually done here in Uganda, and it's the best bus I've ever been on in my entire life. So I am really sorry that I abused these people, and if they're going to make their buses like that, then there's hope for us. I thought I should say that, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
I know there are discussions at high level to see, because one, to have public transport, you need to have, as you say, the buses there. You need to demarcate the routes that are actually to be there. You need to be able to have an operator who should be there. In most cases, what happens is that the operator tends to be a public-private partnership between the city and the private person. Now, what makes it efficient is, as he says, it's about time.
Yes.
So now you don't wait for it to get full.
Yeah.
And that would mean that whoever is operating should be able to cater for the losses that may incur in case they
in the
actually...
interim.
In
Right.
the interim. So that's why it's usually a public-private partnership for someone to be able to guarantee
Yeah.
that. I know the discussions at very, very advanced and very high level, and very soon you may actually see something that...
So you're saying there's something going on in
There's
that
something
direction?
going on, and the thinking is metropolitan.
Right.
Remember what I said during the day, a big number of people.
Right.
So now we are going beyond Kampala and saying, ideally, to be able to plan, they will tell you that you need to look at a radius of 40 kilometers for a city.
Correct.
So when you're here thinking, you're saying, how does someone from Mpiji be able to get into the city very easily.
Very quickly.
I have a very humble appeal for that
someone
matter.
to be able to that.
And my appeal goes to the authorities that let's not politicize this matter. Please, even if we were, because politics is what you earn from,
right,
let us earn honorably, other than gimmicking, politicking. But let also, the second appeal is involve the stakeholders in the taxi industry, because that's where the voices will come, politicians catch on them, and anything you do try would now be in shambles. So we need to, as the negotiations are into the advanced stages, please don't let out the people in transport and in the taxis and the bus industry, so that we harmonize. But also at the higher levels where it is now, let people concur, let people harmonize to this project, so that however many votes we will lose, for the sake of humanity and human dignity, let us lose a few votes and then do it.
And that's it, because we've got to be able to do that. Dr. Kelo, I have just two quick things for you to touch on before we bring in one of your colleagues, because I want to talk a little bit about money for our people in Kampala. And we know about the parish development model and what's been going on. So I want to bring in Ms. Asia Nabisere in just a moment. But before I let you go, and then we'll just have some questions that are coming through on Twitter. This one is coming in from you, Honeyman. He's saying, how do we deal with the borders who are still insisting on riding on pedestrian walks? It's a big challenge where the pedestrian is supposed to walk. Obviously, this has been a key issue, and I think that speaks to enforcement, I guess. Richard is saying it's great that we're hearing their plans, that we can change the drainage system, because he says it's a real mess when it rains. And of course, I think from a public health perspective, that's something that you'll be very passionate about as well. So you can say something very brief about that. And then Derek is saying that he is concerned about the inconsistencies in the functionality of traffic lights, and I agree with him entirely. One day the traffic lights are working, the next day they are not, the next day everyone drives whatever they want. Things that we need to deal with, right?
Yeah, let me start with the last one. Some of them are not really due to our making. You know, these lights have armored cables, those underground cables. I know Issa is the business of electric.
Yes, indeed.
Actually, at times people steal those underground cables.
Sure.
Yes. So that leads to it being off, and then you need to replace. That tends to happen at times. Of course, at times may be due to other technical issues.
Yeah.
But I think what we need to improve on as a city is the response time when the lights are off, such that they can actually, be off. But
yeah,
I know it has been, or even at times when works are being done somewhere else, they tend to affect women.
And of course there's still the indiscipline of the drivers as well.
Because we are having more and more junctions coming on board, we are going to have a traffic control center that is going to be built. So there'll be one big area where you can be able to control the lights, and one person can be able to arrange when this kind of increase on the times on specific junctions.
Yeah, because at the moment, the honest truth is that it's still a mess.
At the moment, it's not linked. So if there's someone be able to override the system, it makes it easy.
No, that definitely helps. And there's the issue of sanitation, what's happening with the drainage. When it rains, Kampala becomes a swimming pool.
Drainage, two things. One is the nature of the city. When people say that the city is on 7 hills and now on 21, does not mean that it's actually that you find rain coming from down. Two is the city is on a plain, and which is in a wetland. That is actually obvious. So what is happening?
A lot of which is being reclaimed.
Yes. So one of the things that is happening for the buildings that are there, what some people have done is that during the construction, you know, simple things like when you pave 80% of your way, you're encouraging runoff. Yet if you have green, that tends to happen. Now in the city center, what some people have done is that when they tap the rainwater, they don't actually connect it to the drain. They tend to it onto the surface. The other is that where there are drains, because of people dumping garbage everywhere, some of it is actually blocked by the garbage. You've noticed that when the floods occur, they tend to recede, probably in a shorter period. Because now what we do, we deploy teams to go that when there are rains, they need to be able to remove the garbage. Because what people do when it rains, they also throw the garbage to go with the drains, which is a very bad habit. But as part of also the program, Kcca, we are going to be able to expand the drains because some of the existing drains are too small to be able to manage. So making the drains bigger such that they can be able to take the runoff.
Yeah. I think the last thing would probably be about just how we enforcement, because a lot of the issues we have are really in discipline. The way the borders ride, the way drivers drive around, the way miscellaneous people behave sometimes. We still seem to have a lot of indiscipline.
Yeah, and I would love what Kcca said about us looking at things, not that someone is trying to or someone is trying to have something else behind. The main issue is that can we be each other's keeper? Now, if I'm seated behind a border and someone is riding on a pavement, I should actually say, again, I'm not going to pay you. And then the person would realize that on a pavement is expensive for me.
I have jumped off several times.
So thank you, Kcca. So because as Kcca, we can't enforce everywhere. But once the public helps us with this, then we'll go a long way.
Right. Cool. Thank you very much, Dr. Okello. We'll just give a few minutes to Navisere, who I hope I pronounced the name right, to just come and tell us a little bit about the parish development model. While she comes, and we'll just change with Dr. Okello there. Is the issue of the traders and how they are being handled at the moment. Do you feel like we are going in the right direction in terms of the fact that we have a lot of traders that are coming to Kampala on a daily basis and what we do with them?
Definitely, Kcca has always been behind the Kcca on seeing that trade orderliness comes back to the city. We cannot wait on this because it is very important that everybody has a right to work, but you work where you have decided to. It is a big challenge if we are going to ask the authorities to provide for spaces where to work from. You personally to initiate to solve. The Kcca and government needs to give us enabling environment, not to spot for us where we should work from. It is not their role. Your head create decision on where you would work from, and now you need the registration.
Right.
I'm looking at people crying that these are widows and all these kind of people. Who told you that widows are not in the shops? Widows are not in the kiosks. Widows are not in the markets. In some markets, some people don't want me, especially the people who are street vendors. But in some markets, I don't even pay for tomatoes because of the effort we put in saying that we maintain trade orderliness. It won't be good that we see military around, we see police around, but what option do you have? It has been in the daylight that we see a fight, serious fights between the Kcca enforcement and people who insist on working on the street. How else do you want these people removed? People banging, people fighting, people even using knives. I remember at one time even one enforcement person was killed because of the scuffle that ensued between them and the vendors. So we are very sorry that we don't support street vendors where they are not allowed to be, but we are also demanding that maybe hawkers' licenses be reinstated and be guided on where to operate from. The moving markets should be clear and cleaned. Other arrangements like night shifts, the authority has every right and obligation to create the spaces but not decide for where such it will work from.
Right.
This is a big, at times when you go to engage these people, they ask, Kcca, we are chasing vendors away. Where do we work from? I ask them, did you provide me where I'm working from? You don't know where I came from. You don't know where my children work from. They must struggle. That is why we go to school. That's why we go for technical training, so that you take a decision by your head and you are not demanding for spaces where to work from government. You know, government will do this. Government will provide the lights, the security, the toilets, and any other facilities, but not the stalls. It's a poor decision to think that you remove the 4,000 people on the street today. How about the 4,000 are preparing to come?
Actually, so the 8,000, because we have a lot more.
You are going to overwhelm the government, and at the end of the day, it will be political gimmicking, and no solution is gotten.
Which politics we need to get away from. Yes. We're joined now by Ms. Asia Navisere China, who is the Parish Development Model Focal Person at the Kampala City Council Authority. Thanks a lot for joining us for the tweet chat. See you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
So last time we had this tweet chat, we were talking to Honorable Barimusi and Honorable Majese about the PDM and how it's rolling out across the entire country. For Kampala, it becomes a bit different, right? Because I'm guessing the dynamics are slightly tweaked. If you can give us some insights into what's happening with PDM here in the city.
Thank you so much, and thanks for hosting me. Whereas the rural areas are talking about agriculture and inputs, in Kampala we are talking about trade and services. And I'm glad that...
So you and Mr. Sechisto become good bedfellows then, yeah?
We become very good bedfellows, and he is trying to address the informal sector, which actually the PDM seeks to address now for the case of Kampala. Because we have sought for people in subsistence economy, and when you go around, these are the people that are in the informal sector. They are the ones you find putting charcoal stoves on tarmac, working in corners, utilizing road reserves and everything else. But thank God that one of the pillars of the PDM, which is community mobilization and mindset change, seeks to address such challenges. There are people who know government must give us everything, from where you sleep to where you work, how you do your things and everything, which is really a mindset change problem.
Yeah.
So much as all pillars are interlinked, but as Kampala, I think we have that one problem. Last week they were doing a trade order in Kawempe, and most of the calls I got were, but you have been mobilizing us to join enterprises under the PDM, and our stalls have been taken. Our mesa have been knocked off the road. What are you going to do? I told them no. We have drawn lessons from earlier programs that government had put in place, and one of them was lack of sensitization. After you enter into the PDM, we have to sensitize you about your duties, about your roles and obligations. Government won't stop at giving you money. How are you going to use this money?
Right.
How do you pay it back? But what is also your obligation? Because you don't work from anywhere because you have gotten PDM money and you have to pay it back. And then when times for payback comes, you say, you know, my kiosk payment. So it is really a timely venture that we have gotten in touch with physical planning, health, and all other directorates. Actually, we have a secretariat at Kcca.
Yeah.
And this draws all members from directorates that they are to ensure that we have an alignment of all programs into the PDM. And I think this will make it quite different from all other earlier programs that have been taking place.
The Kampala is different because it went to 100 million per parish, but of course the population density in the city is substantially higher than anywhere else across the country.
Yeah,
isn't that going to be a challenge in terms of...
Yeah, it's already a challenge because so far I have registered about 1,700 enterprise groups. And these comprise about 100. The lowest actually I have is 60, but then in most of the areas, actually parishes, we have about between 400 and 700 applicants.
Yeah.
Have been registered, so it's quite challenging, but we have it to
the good news though, of course, being the fact that obviously people are very interested in
people
this.
People are very interested.
That's the upside, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but how do you deal with the challenge now?
We're dealing with a challenge through PBM, is a parish-based management information system, because unlike the programs, there was no information to rely on. Under the PDM, we have a guideline that seeks for evidence-based. So if I'm given 100 million, it's not enough. Why isn't it enough?
Right.
We must show cause for the claim of those who have been left out and why they have been left out. So the good thing is that an intervention will come when we have data that is going to inform decisions at the period.
Yeah. So just a question for you: do you think there's a case for you to say that maybe, like, maybe get a slightly bigger allocation because you have a lot of people here?
Yeah, of course. It's already from number of enterprise groups and the members that we have listed under each enterprise group. We really need more finances for Kampala.
Right.
Yeah.
It obviously makes a lot of sense. Any of your people excited about PDM? Have you been able to plug them into how to access some of this funding?
I personally have reservations over the model, but I don't need to do anything in discreditation of a campaign that is massively consumed into our budget. We need to support.
But it has potential to help if it's done properly, right?
That's for another day, but for today, I am encouraging people that fit into that category because the number of registered enterprises, the amount of capital we use around the city don't merge.
Right.
So members of Kcca, very few of them would go to line up for.
You are above this level, in other words.
So, but there are classes of people.
They are not among the
but there are those who really are in need. Unfortunately,
and hope can help them upgrade to where they get to Kcca.
Harmonize is where she started from.
Right.
Please, whatever it is, no amount of excitement should allow money to be given to people that are working from illegal premises.
Yes.
Right.
No matter what it takes, please let us scrutinize and be sure that the money that we have given away is not the money that we have removed as we are enforcing
the law.
The law.
Yes.
And then we shall be looking for these people. We shall make them poorer. If they buy into the stock, they restock their stores, Kcca comes and hits them, and then they become wanted to repay the money, and now they will become dangerous to society. So we need to see that the biggest element we look out for into this is you are working from a legally accepted position, either at the county level, at the CBD level, whether at level. If it is a store, it should be licensed at whatever magnitude of licensing, because nobody would meet you there. If Kcca is break down my Kcca and I have a license, I will take a legal action. But here you are lining up, you have already enlisted your company, whether registered or informal, whether it is a CBO or otherwise, and you are operating from an illegal structure, you are risking. Because here you will have the money, you will be hit, the enforcement will take the stock, at the end of the day you will be wanted.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, we're out of time. It's been a wonderful chat so far. I should point out to everyone who's joining us on UBC and online that the idea behind these tweet chats, behind these discussions, is to simply start debates and get us having discussions about what it means to be a Ugandan. I'm Ugandan. But also hashtag my role. What am I doing? And the easiest place to start is having discussions. So please do find the hashtags on Twitter, Ugandan, my role, tag Ministry of ICT, you can tag me at Ben Mwine, and continue having these discussions. Go online, talk to one another. It's in having these discussions that you come up with some brilliant solutions. You might have ideas that Kcca needs that they haven't thought of yet that will be very useful for them, but also for us just to talk about how can we make our city better and ultimately our country as well. I want to say a big thank you to you for joining us. We'll see you again next time. And a big thank you to the team here at the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance for helping us put this together so we can have a discussion about what it means to be a Ugandan and my role as a citizen. Have yourselves a wonderful day. God bless you and bless Uganda.